Tonight.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Horror Night Oasis, a radio show where we discuss all the latest movies and news from the world of horror. Joining me tonight, as always, is my co-host, Ian. Ian, are you there?
I am.
How are you doing, my friend?
Not too bad. Not too bad.
Yeah, that's about the same here. Besides being a little busy before things getting started here, but hey, that's the world we live in, and things have to happen beforehand. And as you said, we like to have them happen beforehand, before the show, instead of happening during the show. A lot of times we've done this show and the internet just goes out and we just say fuck it and just stop. But here we are, starting off November, a little bit late, but we are here to discuss some heavy-hearted news and a couple reviews. And the big news is that we lost Tony Todd. I know everyone's talked about it when it happened the day after or 2 days after, and we're a little behind because he passed away on the 6th, and I believe it got announced on the 8th, somewhere around there. And it's been a while since we've had like a big death, and he is an icon for the genre. He might not be like the most well known, but he had a pretty illustrious career because he's done a lot of low budget horror stuff besides, his name, top tier stuff like Candyman. Of course, he was in Platoon, one of his earlier roles, and a bunch of, again, under the radar stuff that no one knows about, even if they were just like little cameo pieces here and there, just in there for a couple minutes. One of my favorite ones of his that no one knows about because it's not available, it's still on VHS, is Enemy Territory, where he's the leader of the vampire gang. That's a fun one, and it's like a siege, type movie in an apartment building. Ray Parker Jr. is in it. It's a fun one. One of these days that's going to get released, and hopefully more people will find it and come along to check it out. Hell, it might be on YouTube. So if you happen to listen and you want to see something interesting, check out Tony Todd as the lead vampire gang member. Show me your fangs. That's what he does in the film. It's a very fun little movie. Of course, there's a lot of like straight to video, direct to DVD stuff. One that he did that I've just watched recently called #From Jennifer, even though he's barely in it, but that was a really fun one. Found footage movie. West of Hell is an interesting Western one. He's done a lot of stuff. I mean, it's just he turned out, he was very illustrious actor. He was like, him and Danny Trejo was like on a quest to see how many direct-to-video titles they can churn out in a year. But it sucks because you didn't know he was in bad health. Like sort of like how Wes Craven passed away with the brain tumor, or brain cancer, and it's just like, wow, you don't realize that. And I got to meet him twice. And the first time I got him to sign my Voodoo Dawn VHS, which is another film that's still relegated to VHS. But on the back of the VHS, it has like a picture of him in his, as the Haitian voodoo zombie garb and a machete. Very nice piece to get autographed. And I never got to get him to sign anything. That's when back in the day, I was getting more obscure stuff signed than like the mainstream. Like everyone's come along and doing Candyman and all kinds of stuff, to get him signed. But I wanted something different. That's what I mentioned that before. I always like to get the under the radar, low budget. Like no one's gonna have this signed. And I got Voodoo Dawn signed, and that led into years, a couple years later, and to where I got him where I found the poster for the Richard's convention, at his shop, and to finally get Candyman some VHS signed, and that honestly, and that leads into our review here in a minute, but without finding that poster on the electric post for Richard's convention in Moorhead, I wouldn't have. You're like, okay, now I can get something Candyman related signed by Tony Todd because he was the main attraction. Him, R.A. Mahiloff, Alex Vincent, those were like the big heavy hitters. But it's mainly Tony Todd. He was like the big get. And without seeing that poster on the electric post when I was in Moorhead that one time, I wouldn't have went, and I wouldn't have ran into you, Ian, because you were right
No, I
there beside
know.
me.
That
Because
was my first thought.
yeah, like if it wasn't for that, me and you wouldn't have been in line at the exact same time together. Like you were there before me. We were right there. It was raining. It was starting to come down rain, and here we are standing in the rain for like an hour. It was a small rain. It wasn't a heavy rain, but still, it was me and you just standing there. We didn't know each other. We just talked, and it just led to me and you just like forming this little bond for no reason, and we just connected standing there, and we hung out pretty much that entire day. After I got my autographs, I would always run into you, and we just talked, and we said goodbye to each other. And it was just like, if it wasn't for that poster and Tony Todd and me saying, okay, now I can get something Candyman related signed, I wouldn't have ran into you, and it wouldn't have got my wheels a turning. Because again, around that time in 2013, I wasn't doing anything radio show related. I was doing a few little, because Blog Talk was, again, that was the early days of them deciding to be a bitch and taking everything down to the bare minimum of doing like 30 minutes of something. And I was just not, we discussed this, like over the years and like anniversary shows, and like, but like this one hits hard because again, if it wasn't for Tony Todd, we wouldn't have had this show, and we wouldn't have met up. And I think you just went there just for the fun of it. I don't think you got any autographs in. I really don't think so because
No, I didn't get any autographs. I was le poor, but no,
yeah,
that was when I started to do the horror movie nights that kind of turned out to be a bust at the Richards
cool stuff.
comic shop.
Yeah.
And but that was my first thought. I was like, man, like it was just something I knew about, but like I just never really thought about until his passing, and I was like, man, he was there the first time that you and I met, and I was like, it just brought up like that was like 11 years ago. I was like, good Lord, going on 12. So yeah, no, it's sad. I haven't seen a whole lot of his movies. Shocker. I have seen Candyman. And I always thought he was such a good actor, especially like anytime I saw a little cameo here and there of his, I'd always get excited. But it's kind of a bummer. Like, out of all the celebrities, I honestly didn't think I was going to see that one so soon. But you never know. You
Yeah, I
never
mean, he
know.
was 69, and again, that's still relatively young. And it's just like again, he was so. again, if you think about like his convention appearances, and I always, I saw him at the 2 times, but I know he was at a few other conventions as well, and he was always so energetic and welcoming, and he was talkative, and he was just having a fun time, because he was just like he was a big, he was a tall guy, like he's like 6'6", at least six somewhere up there, and like he's like a big teddy bear because he was just so welcoming and inviting and just
Yeah.
boisterous. He was always like talking to the crowd and people in line while he's dealing with someone else in line. And just like, I think of one time when I first saw him at Scarefest, he was like singing and doing all kinds of stuff. So he was just a very, welcoming person. It just felt like he was just, he was there for the fans. Of course the money was good, of course. I'm not gonna say anything bad about that. But like, this is before the convention prices decided to skyrocket after The Walking Dead. But like, it was just like he was there, and it was just like he was welcoming, and he was wanting to take time with the people and talk about the films that he was in. Like, there was no reason for him to like talk about like Voodoo Dawn and Enemy Territory, but it's like, no, that's the films I was in. That was my second film. That was my third film I was in before all this stuff. And like, it was always interesting to talk to and give you some personal information about the films and the making of it. And again, some of those, again, it's still not on VHS, and he has a good back catalog of stuff that, again, a lot of cameo stuff, but he still has a good back catalog of titles that people should maybe check out, if anything, just for him. But again, if it wasn't for him being there at the comic shop, we wouldn't have been here, and that wouldn't have got my radio show juices flowing to, hey, why don't we do this? And you were just still like new to the genre, like you weren't new to the genre, but you were open to it, of like, sure, yeah, I'm just, you were very open and wanting to learn more about horror. And like, here we are about, 11 years ago, later, and like, you went from, we mentioned this before, where you're like, you were just like, honestly, it's sort of like a newbie, a novice in a sense. You've watched horror, but it's just the mainstream stuff. You didn't deep dive. And you did the show again. Like, we started the show in 2013 around Evil Dead remake, and we kept going. And that kind of leads into where our next review is going to come into, because that was the last time we saw each other, was our next review. And we were doing the radio show on Blog Talk, and we were just doing whatever. We were doing like the movie nights. You were talking about stuff, and then we had a few people come on. Babette Bombshell came on the third episode
Oh my
randomly,
God.
and it was just crazy stuff. Where it's just like we were just reviewing things, like the stuff coming out in theaters, and it wasn't, again, like, it was still sort of mainstream, but I was still talking about low budget stuff. And I think the film coming up, it was a year later in 2014 when this came out. And again, we've only seen each other in person 3 times. And the last time was when we had this film, and we were supposed to have the director come on, Hayden Hall, and things fell through the cracks, and we didn't get a chance to review it. And it was around this time 11 years ago, and we watched this together in your mom's old house in the trailer, and we had a
Yeah.
fun time. And in the back of my mind, I knew I wanted to revisit it, and I realized there's an anniversary coming up this month, and I wanted to revisit it because it had been a fun, going down memory lane with It's Not Delivery, It's Demonic. Because that's like, I honestly think that was your first introduction to truly like low budget, filmmaking, like on like the cheapest
Yeah.
possible way. Because that was kind of an introduction, and like, you had fun with it when we first watched it. And again, it's not a long movie. It's like 30 minutes, 37 minutes long. But when we first watched it, it was fun. We had an enjoyable time with it. We didn't get a chance to watch his other film, Insectoid, because the VCR wouldn't play, and I was kind of worried that it would break or eat the tape, and I didn't want that to happen. So we just watched It's Demonic and had a fun time. And here we are 11 years later, and rewatching it, even though it's been so long, I still felt that fun factor of watching it with you,
Oh yeah,
and,
no, I did too.
and it still holds up as a fun little indie short, quirky, you know, tongue in cheek, actually figuratively and literally cheesy movie. And it's just a dumb fun movie, and it just still holds up all these years later. And again, it's been 11 years, and I still remember me and all these quotes and like, oh yeah, that happened, and it was just it's a fun little shot on video home. I wouldn't say homemade, but it's shot on video indie film. And again, I guess getting into the gist of the film, it's about these three friends. They're sort of geeks in a sense. There's like just like bros in a sense. They're just, hey, let's have a pizza party. And like, yeah, and they make up flyers and you're invited to a pizza party. You're not. Fuck you. All that stuff, and they put it on the wall. And they're just stupid, bros in a sense, dressed in '90s clothes almost. And they order a pizza, and then the lightning strikes the building of the pizza joint, and their phone call goes to this other pizza delivery guy that's basically cultish in a sense. He's a worshiper of pizza, and he delivers the pizza, but they don't pay him or they don't tip him basically, and that causes him to make another pizza, put a pentagram on the box, and give it to him for free, and that causes the pizza to come to life because it's a demonic pizza. And it just goes on from there where it's the three bros just fighting off pizza slices off strings, and one turns into a pizza monster, and it just goes on from there where it's stupidity on film, but it's fun stupidity. It's like, as we
Yes.
mentioned before previously, is like when we bring it up, it's just a fun movie to watch with your friends. And that's how it was when we watched it, and it still holds up in my opinion. Watching it by myself, it just like in that back recesses of my mind, like I feel like you're still right there on the couch to my left watching it with me. And
Yeah.
it just had that fun factor, like, yeah, Ian's here in spirit even though he's not here in person. And it still holds up, even though probably that middle section with the girlfriends, like that one wasn't. But I felt like, again, that just like went away from the movie a little bit. But it's still stupid, you know. But it's still a fun little watch. I mean, it is short, like 30 minutes, but it's just, again, it's just like all these factors that we've mentioned prior to reviewing this, um, just led to this film. And like, it's awful that we had to pay, say bye to Tony Todd. But without Tony Todd, we wouldn't have been able to do the show, and we wouldn't have been able to get It's Not Delivery, It's Demonic, where we watched it together, and then 11 years later finally review it, because it's been a long time coming. So Ian, floor is yours.
Yeah, no, this movie definitely holds, like, rewatching it, like, it
And this has
definitely,
been one that
like,
you wanted to rewatch too. It's been one you've been in the recesses of your mind, like you've always brought it up in reviews, and like, I
because,
got an
yeah.
idea.
Yeah, because, like, I'm obsessed with pizza and, like, the aesthetics of pizza, and this is a horror movie about pizza. Not only that, but, like, the special effects are so weirdly good. Like, you got pizza on, like, visible, you know, uh, fishing line, and yet you got a guy turning into pizza, and like his skin melting into pizza, and then the cheesy like pepperoni effects. Like, it's just amazing, like how, you know, well put together this movie was. Like, it knew what it wanted to do, and it didn't overstay its welcome. Um, and they had fun with it. Like, this was a movie where they were just made it to have fun, and they had an idea. They didn't overcomplicate it with too many ideas being thrown at the wall. It was just pizza, possessed, attacking people, and a person gets possessed by pizza. That's the
Yeah.
story. And I was like,
No,
it's
we
short and
did like
simple.
the transformation. Yeah, the pizza
That's
transformation scene's still pretty good.
yeah. And honestly, I thought it wouldn't hold up to some of like more today's standards. Like, and I was like, man, this is still better than some of the shit we've watched.
Yeah.
Like transformation sequences. I was like, it's cool to see, especially like a reflection. And, maybe in 11 years we'll review Fisted and see how that how that holds up. But no,
Well,
I
actually, we got
really
like 3 years for Fisted because I think that was 2017. So we're closing in on Fisted.
yeah, that's getting there. Which is crazy to think.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, like I think it's this is I obviously this was a surprise film because you didn't tell me until like uh like I didn't even know what it was because you had it the way you labeled it,
Yeah.
and I was like,
I had to
oh
keep that
shit,
a secret until you watched it.
yeah, and I was like, man, but I'm glad to finally get it on where I can watch it whenever too. So that
Yeah.
was pretty.
That's kind of one of those things too. It's there now. Um, and again, you can't really get this anymore. I don't know if you can get it from Hayden Hall, but here's the thing: like Hayden Hall, he went on to do a few other things, not movie related, but he has a new movie out this year called Pizza Party Massacre. So there's another pizza horror movie, Ian, we have to check out. But he's done like a lot of like Blu-ray covers. He did the cover for Burglar from Hell. So he's done a few Blu-ray covers for these boutique labels. But it's always again like there's just that period of time nothing's happened, and then like again going back like I don't know, it had a small VHS run, and like this DVD that we got off of him is like I don't know where you can get that at. It's a rarity too, so it's one of those. Again, it's technically it's a boneyard, but this is an anniversary show in my opinion for it because we never got to touch upon it 11 years ago, and as I said, we had to kind of do it in memoriam with Tony Todd because without all that, this wouldn't have happened. And a year later, finally, when we were starting to get our footing of what we wanted to do with the radio show, and we were getting into reviewing indie stuff, and I wanted to kind of get Ian's feet out of the shallow pond and into the deep end. And this is again, you have to say, Ian, like this is as you said, it holds up, and especially all of the other things that we've watched over the years, and especially later. But it, I had fun with this one, and again, it has so many little quotable moments where I kind of just forgot about all the quotes because it's been so long. Like, oh look, there's a pentagram on this fucking metal, like
Yeah.
is that blood? It's marinara. Like what's happening to him? It looks like he's having Little Caesars.
I know
Yeah.
those little like that. Oh man, there. This was one of those rare finds because, like, I love short films, especially when they know what they're doing, um, because those are usually the ones that try not, a little harder. I feel like sometimes when directors try to go for the, tack on an extra hour when it could just be 30 minutes, that they don't know what to do and they make it, you know, absolutely just like nothing really happening. And so they just fill the void with talking. I bring that up for a reason.
Yeah, yeah, we'll get
Yeah,
there.
we'll get there.
We'll get there. But
But
yeah,
yeah,
it's just
no, this was
for
a
as you
fun
said,
little.
it
Yeah.
is a good trip down memory lane. And as you said, this little 30-minute short knew exactly what it wanted to do, and it's just again a couple of friends doing all this and like making a dumb, stupid, goofy ass movie, and it works. It's 11 years later. Not a lot of people's gonna find it as amusing as us because there's that nostalgia to it in a way because it's like me and you our last time hanging out together in person, and it's just like there's that connection to it that not a lot of people have compared to me and you, and it just holds that spot in our heart, where it's just gonna have that special place to us no matter what. And I think it still holds up, as we mentioned before, and it's just fun and cheesy, as I said before, and it just knows exactly what it wants to do. And again, I'm looking forward to checking out Pizza Party Massacre whenever that comes out. I know it had a premiere at a drive-in here recently, so it's not physically available, but I'm looking forward to whenever that does because if it does, we're going to review it just to see if it how it his progress as a director because it's been again 11 years now since this one. So I'll like to see what he does now with that one. And again, Ian, you got any final thoughts on this before we call it a review on It's Not Delivery, It's Demonic?
Um, Not really. I mean, it was, a nice little surprise. It was fun rewatching it, and I know what I'm going to torture people with on my birthday. So, all right, that's it.
Yeah. All right. So going on from something fun and enjoyable to something not is a little Thanksgiving. Oh boy. We decided to do a little Thanksgiving early, and this one is again, it's like a boneyard. It's another one that you can't find this. No physical copies exist at the moment, unless and there's only a viewable copy on YouTube, thankfully or unthankfully. I don't know. You pick your poison. But it's there. Not to say it's terrible, but it's oh man. But let's try to get into this one. So Thanksgiving came out in 2006, and it is a Thanksgiving slasher movie, sort of slasher movie in a way. I have no idea, because
I got
whereas
confused.
whereas It's Demonic had intentions to make a fun cheesy movie, this one didn't know exactly where it wanted to go, and it didn't have an idea of what it wanted to do, and it just whereas demonic had friends coming together and having fun, this is just friends coming together, hey, let's throw something out quick to make a movie on weekends. So it's two different spectrums here we're working with. And it's so the basic idea of Thanksgiving is that it's a film crew, college film crew. The lead, his name's Spectre. He's the one in film class, and he wants to take his friends out to the woods to make sort of this cabin Evil Dead style sort of slasher Friday the 13th possession type movie. It doesn't they don't know what kind of movie they're making. And like they're always talking about all these scenes that they're like, we're gonna end up to have you on this couch and you're gonna be fucking this girl, and then the skull, you can use the skull and it's gonna suck you off. And it's just like all these scenes is just like don't go anywhere. They're just like relevant, unrelevant scenes. I can't even talk. My mouth is dry. Irrelevant scenes, and they're just out in the woods talking. They're bickering back and forth, constantly. Like, oh, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? It's just like constant fighting and arguing, and nothing really happens. And like then they run into Ari Lehman, and I think this was his first acting gig before, since like Friday the 13th. So it kind of has that claim to fame. That's his first acting gig since Friday the 13th, even though he's barely in it. But then there's also this subplot that comes in there with the Perkins family, and basically the Perkins family is sort of a ghost cannibals. Um, I guess I don't know. This film is just all over the place. It doesn't really mesh with what they're trying to do. It's very meandering. There's honestly there's an inkling of a good idea here with the ghost cannibals with the Perkins family, where I kind of was like, there's something here that could have worked, but nothing else with the film was cohesive enough to make that work. There's some okay practical effects. It's not the best, but they do with what they have, and it's okay. It's not like the worst thing I've seen. Like but there's just a lot of idiosyncrasies in the film where it's just like one of the guys name his name's Grant, and he's just walking and he steps into a bear trap and dies automatically. And so they think the best thing to do, since he can't get the bear trap off his leg and he's already dead, is to chop off his leg. And it's just like, okay, it's just like there's like stupid things, like a lot of just stupid, dumb conversations and don't lead to nowhere. There's characters on and off the screen, um, that come and go, and they just disappear, and it's all over the place, and it just doesn't really work that well. Um, but Ian, what's your thoughts? And then we'll go back and forth. And like I said, it doesn't really the reason it's called Thanksgiving is because the title of the film that they're wanting to make is called Turkey Day Apocalypse, and the killer, his name is Baster. Ian, your thoughts? Oh, maybe Ian's not there. Let me see. Let me check on Ian. Yeah, I think Ian's lost it there. So I'll continue on, I guess, until Ian gets back. Uh, Sorry about that. We're going through technical issues, as we mentioned earlier on in the show. But yeah, there's just a lot of issues with the film. Um, it's not really that enjoyable, and it kind of reminded me of like early brain damage films that were released around this time, um, or other like low budget movies that just like tried to be like pale imitation slashers like Community Service the movie or Scavenger Hunt. Those came at a later date, of course, but it just felt like again like a brain damage or something released by like Tempe or Splatter Rampage, where it's just like very low budget, low rent slasher movie, like low budget Sub Rosa stuff, early thousands, mid thousands stuff, and it just wasn't. Yeah, there we go. It just didn't really have the same luster as those films. Where I mean, there's an inkling of an idea there, but it just didn't work out with what they kind of wanted to accomplish with the movie, and like the whole ghost cannibals coming in, that kind of took me back to like when we reviewed One Ed, The Legend of Harlan Joe Worley, where it involved the family and the house and the computer. And if you haven't heard that review, I'd suggest going back to checking that one out. But yeah, like it just doesn't really go anywhere. They're making a movie, they're not making a movie. Characters go from one place to the other, just meandering conversations about nothing, a lot of bickering. Um, and it just doesn't really go anywhere. And they don't even really play up on the Thanksgiving aspect, as I said before, just the name of the movie they're making and the title of the character they're making. Um, which again, they're kind of bickering back and forth on that as well. Uh, I can't really suggest going to watch it. I mean, it's only there if you're really just wanting to cross off another Thanksgiving slasher movie, ghost film, cannibal movie off your list. Um, because it is so unheard of. It's under the radar for, I guess, for a reason. Um, but there's really, honestly, I can't really suggest it. Um, even if there is an inkling of a good idea there, I just, they could have done more with the Perkins family, and instead of like the last 15 minutes having them go off on a killing spree and like having like the dinners and stuff, like they should have done like more dinners, like sort of like the last Thanksgiving. Like that's a way better film. Sort of did the same thing, but instead of like in a diner and a cannibal family coming to get them and taking them back to their house, it's just ghost cannibals into private property and just killing a bunch of film students. Um, it just doesn't work all that well. Uh, so I can't really. Again, I can see some other company putting this out, or maybe picking it up for like a, I don't know, like a Visual Vengeance putting it out, but there's really not much there. It's like there's another film around this time, but Halloween related, called Devil's Night, and it has Danielle Harris, and it's like it's the most cheap, you know, Halloween inspired ripoff there is, and it's like only released in Canada officially, and it's just like there's really no reason to watch that film because it's boring and lame, and you just except for watching it for Danielle Harris, and I guess that's for the same thing with this one, like Ari Lehman and Thanksgiving, just being a Thanksgiving slasher film, or like all the other like low budget Halloween knockoffs like Basher. No, was it Basher or Bludgeoned or something like that? Where it's like the first Basher movie. That one's not very good. Um, so I couldn't. Again, those are a little bit more, I don't know, harder to come by, especially Devil's Night. Um, because I think the other one was released by like R Squared and like self-released by the director. Like Devil's Night was only released in Canada, and you can only get it in Canada for like, again, very rare. It's a very rare title. Um, but again, it's not really worth tracking down. And it's the same thing with this one. Even though you don't have to go anywhere, you can just type in the title of the name and it's on YouTube. Um, but it's just like there's like not much there to really go back and forth with, sadly. Just like to have fun. It's just not, it's just kind of dull in a lot of places and just meandering. And I mean, there's like they could have done more with the conversations and like